Thank you, Count Corla. And thank you, Minister, for bringing this important bill to the House today. And it's clearly, it's not the sort of legislation that anybody wants to have to bring into the House at any time, but it's such a clearly nuanced and sophisticated and graduated effort to try to effect as much compliance as possible so that we can continue to open our society, so that we can continue to open our pubs and our nightlife and our entertainment industry, and as a step towards that. So thank you for all of the work that needs to go into that. And in looking at the bill, and you see this tradition of extended long titles that we've seen sort of since the Financial Emergency Measures Bill in 2009, where you can see the effort of the drafters so clearly in trying to situate the restrictions that are being placed in the context of the threat to human life and in the threat to human health and in the threat to our society generally. All of the provisions and all of the whereas the emergency has arisen and whereas we have to unfortunately introduce these unusual restrictions into the interference in private property as it was then in 2009 and as it is now into the interference into the operation of somebody's lawful business in a licensed premise or in a registered business. And the way in which it's set out, I think, it really sets the tone for the bill and really sets the tone for what you and the department are trying to achieve and what the government is trying to achieve, to do everything that we can to effect compliance, but recognising that what you're having to do is in the context of a genuinely serious and unprecedented emergency. And we have had, as Deputy Richmond said, an enormously strong tradition of policing by consent in this country, and we have seen how that graduated policing approach has worked well in different contexts. As recently as earlier in the year, this year, where we've had the regulations of movement and the extraordinary work by the Gardaí out in our communities and trying to monitor and give effect and trying to give encouragement and education to people to try to restrict their movements and encourage them to restrict their movements for the benefit of everybody in society. And of course, in doing so, they had, during the period between the 8th of April and the 27th of June, over 1 million interactions with the public in the context of the operation of those regulations. And out of the more than 1 million interactions, they only had to use any of the powers that had been given to them by this House on 320 occasions. And it really is an example of the graduated nature of it. And I would expect, as you have said, that a similar approach will be taken by the police. Because this bill at every stage is about education, it is about trying to effect compliance, and it is a proportionate and reasonable response to the threat that can be posed by people who are breaching and continue to breach the regulations within pubs or other environments. And as you have said, this is a step towards perhaps being able to open pubs more broadly, a step towards being able to do so safely, and to give the Gardaí the powers where they are needed, if they are needed, to be able to effect compliance. And as you go through the bill, you see every effort that has been made to try to approach it in a proportionate way. You are asked, and a bit like the begging, but a bit like other legislation, you are asked at every stage to try to ask for compliance, to give direction, to give advice, and it is only where that direction by the Gardaí isn't followed that more draconian measures must apply and can apply. Even where that is so, they're for short periods. They are for periods initially of just the rest of the day or into the following morning, with the opportunity for the business to reopen the following day. They are for periods of not more than 72 hours in circumstances where it is more serious and where the district court, where there has had to be an additional application. And again, it's not about closing down businesses. It's simply about trying to effect compliance in the moment, at the time, to prevent danger to public health and to prevent breaches of the regulations. Because, of course, you can imagine situations in which publicans who are working very hard to give effect to all of the regulations that have been there, where they themselves may find from time to time situations that become, through no fault of their own, unmanageable or overly difficult, where they have where customers are looking and finding it difficult to see that's in compliance with the regulations, and where publicans may want or may look to, in certain cases, support from the Gardaí to be able to help them, and where without the benefit of these regulations, without these powers, that the Gardaí may not have been able to help. So it isn't about exercising a heavy hand at all. It's about simply being able to give a very firm direction direction, a very sort of well-directed nudge, as it were, towards effecting compliance in the interest of public health. And it's absolutely necessary. And I want to thank, as others have done, the work of the Gardaí and the Gardaí throughout this complete period, where they have treated people with such respect and with such dignity in having to make such changes to their lives, where they have stopped and educated and provided assistance, where they have provided assistance to people who have needed it quite outside of the operation of these or other regulations. And I really want to thank the Gardaí. I've been a member of the Special COVID Committee since its establishment, and it's clear to see that people have gotten now to, I think, the greatest degree of frustration, even more so than during the lockdown, when it was very clear what was necessary, when it was very clear why it was necessary, and where all of the rules were very, very clear. Now we find, and we have found over the last number of weeks, to be at the most difficult phase, where we're trying to reopen things, where we are trying to re-encourage activity. And people have, totally understandably, reached the end of their forgiveness for that in some cases, just reached the edge of their patience in others. Perhaps they're just tired of trying to follow the logic or the science behind the different decisions that have to be made. And it's completely understandable why people are frustrated in their personal lives. It's also completely understandable why business is frustrated. It's completely understandable that they want to get back to normality, that they want to get back to having an income stream, to supporting their employees and to maintaining the viability of their businesses. Of course it is. But it's just at this very moment that we're seeing, as we have reopened, a resurgence, and we must do everything that we can to manage this in a difficult and nuanced way. And that's not going to be easy. But this type of legislation, which is limited, proportionate, graduated and delicate, and which has an inbuilt sunset clause, is the right approach, and I commend you, Minister, for bringing it to the House and wish you well with it.
Thank you very much.